What's up, guys? Welcome to Market Noel. I am super excited to be here again this year designing a wreath for y'all. It's my favorite thing to do. It's a holiday wreath time. So I'm so excited that they let me come back and do it again this year. I did it last year at Market Noel, and who knew that they would let me come back and do it again? It might actually be because this year I'm a JLB member. Super excited. I am no longer in my provision year, so I am super excited to officially be one of the gang. So what I'm gonna do today is just demonstrate the fun of how you can make your own holiday wreath at home. Now, I was very tempted to go and order all the snazzy things that I order from like all the secret places all over the world, but I figured, how's that gonna help you? So all of this came from Hobby Lobby, actually like 15 minutes ago. See, that's how we do things around here. So I'm gonna show you exactly how to make it at home, but using anything that you can get at Walmart, Hobby Lobby, Amazon, all the things. These are no super secret design things because I am a floral and event designer. So that leads me a little bit into who am I. I am Cece, like I said, but I am the owner of Cece Designs and Events here in Birmingham, Alabama. I am a wedding and special event floral designer and event designer. I love all things pink. I always have a pink flower in my hair, and I love to do all the things that require creativity pretty much on any level. So let's get started. Of course, if you have any questions and would like to find out more about me, you can check me out at www.ccdesignsllc. I'm also thinking that we're probably going to offer an in-person design class too, so that'll be super fun if we can get that together this year. So first and foremost, I wanted to show you the wreath that I purchased, like I said, 15 minutes ago at Hobby Lobby. This is a 24-inch wreath. All right, so when you purchase these from Hobby Lobby, they look like a blue whale pretty much sat on top of them, okay? This is pretty much, I'm not doing it the justice that it normally looks like because we pre-fluffed this one a little bit. One of the biggest things that I see about people that want to make their own wreaths is they leave it just like this. This is a no-no, all right? What you have to do is you have to fluff your wreath, all right? And what that means is you come in and you grab all these little fluffy, fibrous tendrils, and you just give them a little bit of a hairdo, all right? That means just fluffing them up and making them a little bit more three-dimensional. You do not want to look like, or make it look like Santa himself sat on your wreath. All right, and these are hardy wreaths, so they have wire kind of built into them and all these little fibers. It'll shed just a little bit, but don't worry about it. You definitely want, the wilder the better. If it looks like it just had a fun day sticking its head out the window, then that's the way you want it to look, okay? So you definitely want to fluff first. If you buy a fresh wreath, that's going to be a little harder to do, but it can be done. It just won't fluff as well. So this was probably the biggest part of my demo last year. Who would have known that so many people wanted to know how to make a bow? So we're gonna take a little extra time showing you this. Even though we're just starting out, I'm gonna make sure all the rest of it goes a lot faster. But we're gonna start out with this so that I can teach you how to make the proper bow, all right? So first thing you want to do is, if you're working with a wreath that's about this size or any bigger, you always want like a 2.5 to 3-inch ribbon, which I think this is a 3-inch ribbon. You don't want to use like tiny little shoestrings because it's too small and it won't stand out. It needs to be kind of the focal point of your wreath, all right? So what I like to do is give myself a little extra what I call tail, because I'm going to weave it in or let it hang depending on how we do this. And so I always never give myself enough. So over exaggerate how much you give yourself, okay? And then the first thing I do, I am right-handed. So I pinch a portion of the ribbon with my pointer finger and my thumb. And then you want to roll your palm over, okay? This might seem like extremely detailed to make a bow, but this is the best way to do it. All right, so when you roll your palm over, you have to remember that you're just stacking on top of itself, all right? So the first thing I do is I make a pretty good size loop, and yet again, I lay it down in the palm of my hand. Now, your first loop wants to be your biggest loop. all right? Anytime you're making a bow, you wanna make sure you start larger and then go smaller as you're dropping the loops inside, but you don't wanna go too small. You want all to be closely about the same size, but shrink in just a little bit every so often. All right, because this is a good textural ribbon, you want to twist it, and you see that twisted, okay? The reason why you twist it is because this is not a double-faced ribbon. So all of the pretty is on one side. If you don't twist it, then you'll wind up with glittery loop, non-glittery loop, glittery loop, non-glittery loop. So you have to twist it to make sure that you're getting the outside each time. Now, this is probably the most important part about the bow, and the thing that I am the most neurotic about is this sets the tone of the whole bow. How big is it gonna be? And these two guys need to match. You do not want a lopsided bow. It is a travesty of epic proportions, all right? So you wanna make sure that these two little guys are roughly about the same size. I am a little, like I said, over the top about that. I've been known to grab a ruler and measure it, but today we're gonna just low-key get it done, all right? So you want these about the same size, all right, and that sets your base. You notice I still have my palm down and I'm still pinching the center of it. Now we're gonna do it again and we're gonna twist, and this time I'm going to lay the next loop equally as big, kind of to the side of the first loop, okay? And did y'all see that little twist I did there? Twist it again. And then I'm going to lay the fourth loop, yet again about the same size, right next to the other one. So this was our first loop, this was our second loop. We went to that side of the first loop, and then we diagonally went to the other side of the next loop, okay? And I'm gonna stretch this out and see if I can make it about the same size. Now, whichever loop you didn't do on that side, you're gonna do on the opposite side. So we're gonna twist it again. And since I came this way, I'm gonna go this way. Who's confused yet? Good, it's totally normal, all right? This is an art form that takes a lot of practice, all right? So this side, and then I'm going to go to the other side. Now this is truly what is considered the base of your bow. So you have these two original ones that are in the center, and if you can tell, these other side ones ever so slightly sit right above the first two loops, all right? Now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna keep layering them, but each time I'm gonna come just a little bit more, I mean, I'm talking like a milli-inch inside of the other one, okay? Now you could do this and make like a 20 loop bow and it'd be like the biggest bow on the block. All your neighbors will have bow envy. But I like to not only have a big bow, but not go too overboard because I want it to not completely overtake the wreath. So ideally, I like to do 4 to 5 loops on each side. Okay, and you always want to end on the opposite side of where you started, all right? So because my tail in the back is coming down at this way, I know that this loop was the first loop that I started. So when I get ready to end, I'm going to end making sure that it's on this last loop on this side. So one of the things that I also take time to do is to stop for a minute and look and see how that looks size-wise on the wreath. You always want to get wired ribbon too, especially if you're going to make an outdoor wreath. If you are using non-wired ribbon, you will run into the problem of it collapsing and looking very tired and very sick, and we don't want that, all right? So wired ribbon is making sure you have the ribbon that has wired on the edges, all right? So I kind of told a little fib, so I'm going to add a couple of extra loops for this one. I just kind of think it needs just a few more to make it look a little bit fuller. When you're dealing with glitter ribbon, a lot of times it takes just a little extra girth to make it look good. All right. So this one has a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, whoa, with 7? No, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. All right. So now this goes without saying. You need to make sure that you have an even amount on each side. Yet again, that would cause a what? Lopsided bow. We don't want that. All right. Once I do that, I do one more last twist, and I do a really tiny loop. I open my fingers up, and I grab it, and that creates that pretty little center loop in the middle of the bow. All right. Now, I am still designing this bow face down on my palm, and I still have these tiny little 2 fingers pinching the center. It did have to kind of go inside of the hole of my 2 fingers. It drops down as you get it too packed, but I still am holding it exactly the same way. So I've left this tail, and I'm going to create a matching set. Now, if you're gonna try to make your own wreath, you definitely want to have a very, very, very good pair of scissors. In my line of work, these are like the Loch Ness Monster, okay? They show up, they disappear, you never see them again, all right? So you need to invest in very, very good scissors that you ban anybody else from using so that they don't get dull and they cut your ribbon properly. Now, back in the days of me when I used to work in a flower shop, we used to do this with ribbon, just tie this off with ribbon. Now, thanks to my trusty friend Jared, who introduced me into all different sizes of zip ties, it has revolutionized the flower and the wedding industry and the bow making industry. So I would highly recommend you get some tiny little zip ties. These are probably about 8 inches, and I don't even know how wide those are, but they're tiny. These are the ideal ones that you want to use to clamp your bow. Okay, you want to pull it real tight. Now, just like we fluffed the wreath, it's time to fluff the bow. And this again is why the wire in it comes in handy. Now, if you decide to make your own wreath at home and you do an amazing job and decide that you're going to put this up every single year of your life is complete, just remember that when you store this, you need to get a good wreath box to store it, and you need to make sure that you're very aware that it is going to flatten out even with the leaf box. Okay, and you're going to have to re-fluff it every year. All right, now I like to take a piece of floral wire and find a little crack that I can get in. All right, and I'm sliding it through the zip tie after I cut all that off, okay? And I'm gonna take this, twist it around the bow. All right, ta-da! Now y'all can all be extreme bow experts. We're gonna sit this little guy off to the side, and we're going to add him kind of in just a few minutes. One of the things that you wanna start with, like I said, are these textural, there you go, I'm gonna get it. Textural pieces that are kind of at an up and down angle. And the first thing that I like to do is kind of stretch them out. I like these little pieces that had these little pine cones on them. Another thing that's always important is to make sure that, I don't know, you design one at a time. Or one style at a time. I do that in my floral work and my wedding work. I am just neurotic. It's kind of like the design version of people that eat their vegetables all the same one at the same time and will not spread it out. It's kind of the same concept. All right, now you can use a hot glue gun to adhere these, and you can use wire. I use kind of a mixture of both, but instead of just using a good old-fashioned hot glue gun, I yet again use kind of my old school learning from when I worked in a flower shop, and this is a electric skillet. All right, it's nothing fancy. It's an electric skillet that you can buy at Walmart, and you can buy what's called glue pellets. I'm sure they have those at Hobby Lobby. That we did not buy those at Hobby Lobby. And you pour them in there, and it kind of makes this runny, ooey gooey glue. All right, but you can use a glue gun. That's perfectly fine also. All right, so these are the two ways that we're going to adhere it, using glue and using wire. And like I said, first things first, I'm going to get the kind of most spiky, obtrusive looking pieces. I'm going to go ahead and get them mixed in. I really loved buying these also because these are flocked. That's your word for the day. This is flocked. Flocked is when you take something like this that does not have artificial snow on it. You buy a can of artificial snow and then you spray it on there. Be careful, because the first time I flocked something, I basically flocked everything but the piece I was trying to flock. Snow and everything. So it can get a little crazy. So just keep that in mind. So now we're gonna put these in. And first I kind of map out, the best thing to do, I think, because glue is kind of permanent, is I like to map out exactly where I want to put things before I glue it in. All right, so we're gonna start with that little guy. And because these are also made from a wire foundation, they can be bent just like all the other pieces I told you about. So if you've noticed, I've kind of bent this one up to kind of curve just a little bit. All right. I'm gonna do the same thing here. And you don't want to just sit it on top of the wreath. You definitely want to make it look like it's a natural part of the wreath. So I'm kind of integrating it into the fibrous little pieces. All right, and then since we only got a 3, that's usually, I don't know if I already said that or not, but that's kind of the ideal number that you want to buy. Anytime you work in a design realm, you always want to use pieces of 3s, 5s, 9s. The theory is always odd numbers. So I usually, on something small, will do numbers of 3. All right, so since I only bought 3, but I really kind of want to break that up and add it more through the wreath, I snipped it in half. All right, and that just gives a little touch of that white flocking all the way through the wreath. Now, I love these little guys. They've got pine cones on them. So we're gonna slide him in also. Yet again, I'm just really checking to see the placement. See what I like as far as the shape and the texture, what looks good in the wreath. This way you're not gluing and pulling it out, gluing and pulling it out, okay? I'm not gonna cut this little guy yet because I don't know exactly if I'm gonna keep those in. I'm gonna save that, and I'm going to mix in these pretty little crystal guys, okay? What you want this to look like is if you had ran outside and you got you some twigs that just happened to just naturally have crystals hanging on them, and you brought them in and you wanted to make this beautiful wreath with them, okay? So this needs to have a feeling of like it just came in from the outdoors. You just found this while you were just lollygagging around, and you decided that these are some great little pieces that would look good in a wreath. Yet again, we're going to do the same thing as you see right here. So you can just pull those apart. All right. And I'm going to put a piece down here and a piece down here. Now the reason I am breaking these apart not only for their numbers, like I said, to get them in the numbers that I need, but you also want to be careful to not clump things. I mean, unless you're going for this grouping kind of look, it needs to have, if there's going to be a piece in the bow that you want to insert like part of the theme, you want to carry it all the way through the wreath. All right, so I don't want to just put a whole bunch right here and make like crystal horns. I want to carry it all the way through the wreath. All right, so, and we're going to bend these guys back just a little bit so that they're, you know, you don't want somebody to come over to your house and get stabbed in the eye because this is on your front door, okay? So you got to kind of make sure that it's not a danger zone. All right, Now I've got the majority of what I'm calling like the elongated and the pointed things in to kind of figure out if I'm on the right path of what I like style-wise. All right. Now I want to make sure that I have a good placement for what I'm considering kind of some of my focal points. I really feel like our owl is our biggest focal point, but these little guys are too. All right. So I'm gonna put one up here dead center. And now's a good time to go ahead and put the bow on, just to make sure that all of this is cohesive. All right, so I make a good little flat area. Make sure you get your bow fluffed. You want to make sure it's kind of hugging your wreath. All right, and then these little crystal guys look really good, kind of popping outside of it. Now if this is crooked, y'all don't judge me because I am trying to do this on an angle. So if it's crooked, just we're gonna Photoshop it hopefully and just make it look beautiful at a later date. All right, so we've got one of the little felt flowers in. I'm gonna put another one. A lot of times people don't realize how important the side of your wreath is either. You know, you don't wanna waste a lot of good product on the side, but it is a 360 kind of piece, or at least 3/4 sided. You have your front and you have your sides. Nobody's really gonna see the back because it's probably gonna be pressed up against a door or a wall or on a fireplace. But you definitely don't want all this beautiful in the front and then it just bare on the sides. So we're gonna offset these little guys. Two things you can do. I have a tendency to have a serious problem with symmetry. So I always want them to be even, but it actually looks better on your wreath if it's not even, so I have to fight it a lot. So we're gonna pull this guy down a little bit, and we're gonna raise this one up just a little bit higher than him, okay? Because we don't want it to look like two fluffy eyeballs staring at you. That's a bad thing too, all right? So we're gonna move him just a little bit off center, all right? So that it isn't perfect symmetry. It pains me to all the levels, but that's the jam. So remember these really pretty balls that I told you about? I don't even know what this shape is that has the kind of pointed down part to it, but it is always going to be, I like a shape that's always a little bit different than just a sphere, just a round ball. I'm always going to like something with a little bit more shape to it because I feel like that's kind of a little bit more exciting. All right, so there we go. So we've installed these two now, but like I said, are we going to stop with just two? Of course not. So let's get a third one on. So we've got these two kind of catty corner. I definitely think, see, this is why I don't glue it, because I'll just move things until I find where I'm happy with them. So we're gonna go up here and we're going to get our third little guy wired in. Now this little guy I'm putting in, y'all might be like, I can't even see that, Cece, but that's okay, because if this was on your front door, you might not be able to see it in the live tutorial, but if somebody was coming to your door and they were knocking on it, they would notice that this pretty little guy is just kind of tucked back here behind your bow. Yet again, this is the point, the part that I talk about, always covering your panties, all right? So this little guy's kind of sticking out. Let's get a few more of these in there. To kind of speed this up, because I'm pretty good on knowing my direction, I am gonna go ahead and start gluing a few. Here's to hoping I don't jinx myself and decide that I don't like my placement now that I've started to glue them. So even though these were pre-wired for me, I'm gonna use my snazzy wire cutters. Cut that off. Now since these are not plastic orbs, and they're the glass ones, they have a tendency to, their little toppers, hats as I like to call them, have a tendency to slip off pretty regularly on the glass ones. So we pre-glued them down so that they would not slip off. Because there is nothing worse than designing a beautiful wreath, packing it away, pulling it back out the next year, and just seeing nothing but these little silver caps from where all your ornaments used to be because they slipped off and they're no longer on there. All right, so you definitely, usually with the plastic ones, you don't have to do that. So most of the time they're adhered on, but I still usually will do it to my plastic ones just to be safe. So what I'm doing is I'm just dipping the top of it in glue, and I am nestling it in some place that I think looks fabulous to me. So here's a prime example. See this little guy? See how that just pulls out? And this little guy, even though they glued it down, it didn't glue very well. So these little guys will just pop out if you're not super careful. So that's why we pre-glue them down. You also want to be careful at what type of glue you use if you are using glass ornaments, because if you get glue too hot on glass, it will cause it to shatter. So you want to make sure that even if you are using a glue pan, that you do not have, if there's smoke coming out of it, you have it entirely too hot. All right, so you want to make sure, even if you are using plastic ornaments, sometimes if you get it too hot, it will just melt the ornament if you're not careful. So if you are using a glue gun, you want to make sure that you're using a glue gun that you can control the heat level on. Now, the gluing depends all on how you want it to sit. I'm letting the glue run down the side of this because the way I'm putting it in, I am putting it in the direction that I want it glued down on its side. Whereas with the balls, the orbs, I was gluing them with their little hats straight in. So it just really depends on where you want to put it. All right. Same thing. This with the snowflakes right here where these little loops are that you would normally use the hanger. That's the, to me, that's what I consider part of the panties. So I don't want that showing. So that's the part I'm actually going to dip in the glue and get the glue on it. And let him get tucked in there. Literally, I am going to look like a full-blown Tinkerbell. I could just use part of this as my costume with the amount of glitter I'm going to be covered in by the time you get done. So just be aware. All right, I'm gonna come back here, glue this little fella in. And you don't want to go too deep into the arrangement because you definitely want it to stand out. This guy. This is leaned up that way. Let's go. Since I went kind of on the outside of the arrangement for the first section, for the first ones I put in, I want to move that one more in to the inside of the arrangement. Okay. So see, this guy's outside, that moved inside. These are our last elements that we're going to add into the wreath. These are our fuzzy little owls. Love them. All right. So I've noticed right here that there seems to be a good little bare spot right here. So this is where I like to use big pieces, but also save some big pieces for at the end. All right. So I'm going to stick his little feathery behind in this glue. All right. And then I feel like this is a very good place for him because look, he looks like he's just perched right on top of this. Now, when you're dealing with animals, let me just go ahead and warn you, just like they say to never be in a TV show with animals and children because they just require a lot of effort. Same thing when you're working with them. So what you don't want to do, you have to be very strategic about where you place, like if you use a deer, antlers, an owl. This Okay, that would not work. That would just look weird. He would look like he had been drinking earlier in the day. That's not okay, all right? Also, you don't want like owl behind showing you. Like somebody coming to your door and being like, well, great, all the animals are mooning me. So you have to be very, very, very strategic if you want to get involved with adding something like this that is very one-sided to your pieces, and map out where they're going to be, because unlike ordering like a custom set of like owls that were meant to go on a wreath or a tree, these are all facing the same way. So you have to figure out a way to insert them and get them in to where it looks natural the way that they're facing, but they still look like they're living their best life right here. So that, we're gonna do yet again a family of how many? What? Who knows? 3! They're so quiet over there. All right. Now a lot of times if you were to, they'll sell ornaments like this in sets of 3 or 4, and they'll go different ways. But since these guys were all like little individual pieces, all right, so he's just living his best life, just peeking out kind of from this bow. I don't want him at the exact angle of this little guy. And see, we put this heavy pine cone here, so the heaviness of this owl sitting kind of gives it a good balance without them being exactly the same pieces. So last but not least, it is all about the details. That's our motto at Cece Designs. It really isn't just cover your panties. I swear we have other things that we say around there. And our motto is no detail left undone. I'm very detail oriented when it comes to my weddings and my special events, to the point that it drives my staff crazy. But this is not even being extra. This is just what you should do. You always want to make sure that the tails of your ribbon is nice, clean, and neat. I hate a straight across because I just think that that's boring. So you can either cut your ribbon on a diagonal. You always want to try to do it in one swift swoop if you can, unlike what I just did, but this is very thick ribbon. So that is what's called just an angle tip, or my favorite is what's called a ballet point. Okay, so you fold the ribbon over and you cut it at an angle, and it creates these little things. Now, another thing is, so we have these kind of long and hanging down. Because it's wired ribbon, you can kind of, one of the things that I always do is kind of bend my ribbon just a little bit. And since this is not sitting flush up against a door, it's wanting to swing backwards. But if it was sitting up against a door, that would lay really pretty, kind of crinkled up like that. All right, so there you go. There is your tutorial. So I bought all this extra stuff, and I'm not gonna use it. But other things that look really good in there is pine cones. You can go find pine cones out of your yard. You can flock them. You can use them yourself. Use the ones that you find yourself. If you have watched this and decided, Cece, I am not even going to attempt that, this is just crazy, it's too much for me, I do make custom wreaths and would love to make them for you. You can reach out to us, like I said, at cecedesignsllc.com, and that's CECEDESIGNS LLC.com, and we would be more than happy to make them for you. Just to kind of give you an idea, this one runs, these are probably more, since they're what we call silk wreaths, or not fresh wreaths, you're looking more into like 155, 165, sometimes around 125, because these will last for you to use over and over again every year. If you were wanting just a fresh one with maybe like a pretty bow, those range anywhere from 65 to 100, depending on how many tchotchkes you would like to have on them. It's one of my favorite things to say. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed learning how to, at bare minimum, make a bow, if not decorate your own fabulous custom wreath for the holidays. If you do make one, I would love for you to tag me in it and post it online. You can always hashtag learned from Cece or Cece Peep. Those are some of my favorite things. But I would love to see how you took what I taught you today and made your own Christmas or holiday decorations. Thanks for being here. Always feel free to reach out and ask if you have any questions, and happy holidays.